All right, we are back yet again with the awesome Emily Albrecht from St. Olaf.
Hello again.
And today we're doing something different. We're going to talk about the hostile campus that you guys have had to deal with for years, and it's gotten a lot better. I think a lot of people have been surprised to hear how good things have gotten on your campus, but they certainly didn't start that way. And I think this is like the area where we are the least causally related to why things have gone well. It's not like, the Equip for Life course helped you fix things with campus admin or whatever. Like, you guys have just done a really, really good job of handling these different situations. And over the long term, you've seen some remarkable change. And so this is an episode that's probably going to be more helpful to pro-life high school and college clubs than your average adult pro-life person that like listens to most of our podcasts. But I think for the clubs, this is going to be so helpful to just find out, like, as a case study, how did you guys do this? We've told the story several times because it's an awesome story. But we haven't, I don't even know some of the details of what you guys did that kind of helped things get so much better with just getting the campus, the admin, the pro-choice students on campus to be less hostile than they were when you guys, first kind of got going as a club. So there's something interesting about your club that I think is relatively unique, or at least as far as I understand unique, in that it's not like you guys have been satisfied with just keeping busy doing outreaches all the time and club meetings and officer meetings and all that on your own campus and going to school and working. But you've also really cared about helping other pro-life campus clubs if they are asking for your help. Like, you guys have spent a lot of time working with other clubs. So talk a little bit about that.
Working with other clubs is honestly one of my favorite things to do.
That's so
Since
cool.
we kind of started becoming famous as a club, which is really weird to say, but ever since Ira kind of found out about my club and we recorded a video interview with me, and we just started becoming more public and talking about our story. I've had so many other pro-life college and high school and community groups reach out to me and reach out to my club in general, asking for advice or to meet with us or to Zoom into one of their club meetings to talk about a specific thing.
That's the thing that I think is unusual. I don't think it's unusual for club leaders to talk to each other and pick each other's brains. But you guys zooming into their meetings to do trainings and stuff, I think that's pretty unique.
I think it's really fun. But the reason I'm really excited to do this particular podcast about kind of how to deal with a hostile campus is precisely because that's probably the most frequent question that I'm asked when other club leaders or clubs reach out to me after hearing about my story. They want to often learn about Equal Rights Institute and what it is, or they want to learn about how they could get the course. But most often, they come to me with some story of how they feel like they have a bad relationship with maybe their administration or with other students or with the pro-choice club on their campus, and they're not sure how to handle that situation. And they're wondering, what did I do to deal with the vandalisms I had? What did I do to make my relationships better on campus? And so I have a lot of different ideas just to tell you about kind of what I did and how I would recommend other clubs go about doing what I did.
Cool. And then we'll just be able to point people to this podcast and say, listen to this. This will be helpful to you.
Exactly. So
okay.
The first thing I want to talk about is the idea of a club image. So when I describe a club image, essentially that's what the campus sees your club as, who they see you as being and what they see your purpose as being on their campus. And the club image that we had at St. Olaf before I started with the club was pretty poor. And that's not really as a result of anything that the club before me did. They were awesome. I've met several of their leaders. I know the founders, and they were doing really awesome work.
They weren't out being weird or obnoxious or anything like that.
Weird or obnoxious at all.
A lot of people didn't know they existed.
And that's what gave them a bad rap. That's so strange because students on the whole have only ever really seen what the media portrays pro-lifers to be. And so the students on my campus knew there was a pro-life group and automatically knew I don't like them. Not because of anything they'd done. Like, they were awesome. I love them. I shout out to all of you. Shout out to Caroline and Christina and all the people who I know are listening to this podcast who had big roles in the founding.
Yep.
They were doing such amazing work, but the campus didn't like them purely because they really didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
And they had this automatic negative stereotype of pro-lifers. And today, flash forward, my club image has become one where students feel like I am a person who wants to have dialogues about abortion. I am a person who they respect and who has strong pro-life beliefs and is willing to stand up for those and talk about them, but who has good reasons behind my beliefs. And we're known as kind of being the most respected and professional student organization on our campus just because of how we carry ourselves. Yes. And how we are dedicated to academic discussions. That's something my campus really values. And so for us, we've just seen this huge shift in how the campus portrays us.
So does that come purely because of the way that you guys do outreach? Like, you guys will do outreach, 2 or more times a month. So they're certainly getting that from you about the way that you guys do outreach. Is there also another component to how they are getting that image of who you guys are?
Yes. Welcome to the rest of this podcast,
Awesome.
Josh. Here we go. So we are going to talk about outreach and what that means, but we're also going to talk about vandalisms and how to deal with those in a way that changes what the campus thinks of you, and how to deal with pro-choice people in your campus, especially your pro-choice club. Because often how you treat them and how they treat you will help to dictate how the rest of the campus views you, because that relationship can be seen as a very public thing.
Interesting.
So let's dive into this.
Cool.
The first thing I want to talk about is vandalism.
Okay.
So vandalism is something that my club used to experience a lot of. And it's something that I know a lot of pro-life college groups are experiencing. It's probably the most common thing people mention to me is like, we're getting a lot of vandalism on our displays and things like that. And I have so many insane vandalism stories.
Can you tell one?
Yes, I can tell one. A lot of people have heard me tell our vandalism story from that kind of first semester I was in the club.
You guys had hallway displays.
We had hallway displays. And there was this display that was vandalized 13 times in 1 week. And administration ignored all of my reports about it. But my other personal favorite vandalism story, there was this student who after looking, I had the privilege of getting to hear about some of the security camera footage. I didn't get to see it myself, but I got to talk with administration about it. And there was a student that had come up to our outreach table. This was pretty early on in us doing outreach. And they had come up and signed one of our pads on our Should Abortion Remain Legal table, but had refused to talk to us.
Okay.
You can see that on the footage. And then they marched down the hallway to where we had a hallway display up. And
what was the display?
I honestly don't even remember. This was like one of our very first displays.
Okay.
I want to say it was about our local pregnancy resource center, but I truly don't even remember which display it was.
Okay.
And they are on their way down the hallway, clearly very mad, and they grab a poster off the wall and rip it down and drop it and keep walking. Along behind them comes some anonymous nice person who sees this happen, picks up the poster off the floor and puts it back on the wall. And I was like,
nice
yes,
is that?
thank you. Whoever you are, I don't know who you
good
are,
Samaritan.
but you're awesome. Person number 1 turns around and sees that person number 2 just did this, marches back over, rips the same poster back off the wall, crumples it in a ball, and puts it in their pocket.
He really didn't like that particular
Really did not like that particular
sign.
poster. Then proceeded to go check his mailbox in the student union, which enabled the security camera footage to identify the person based on what mailbox they checked. So word to the wise, if you're ever planning to vandalize a display, don't go check your mailbox right afterwards. Because the security camera footage can figure out who you are.
This is kind of like how a lot of people have recently realized maybe don't live stream yourself committing a federal crime.
Yeah,
it makes it really easy for the FBI.
Exactly. So we've had a lot of really funny sometimes, like looking back on it, vandalism stories like that.
Yeah.
But the question becomes, okay, what do you actually do when something like that happens? Like, what did I do when I walked down the hallway and discovered that one poster was missing, right? I obviously didn't know the whole story at that point about the person that had ripped down whatever. Like, I just see, we have a poster missing. So what do I do?
Yeah.
The first question always is, when should I report something to administration and when shouldn't I? Okay, so most colleges have some sort of reporting system. In our case, it's called a bias reporting system, and it's like an online form that you fill out, and that's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Every college has some sort of way to report discrimination you're experiencing or something like that on your campus.
Yeah.
So for us, I just go to this online bias report form. But the first thing I have to do is figure out, is this a time to report or not a time to report? Because you don't want to turn into the boy who cried wolf. And I definitely made that mistake at first. Like my first few times with some sort of vandalism, I would report anything that looked like vandalism. But you don't want to report something you can't prove was actually vandalism.
So what is something that looks like vandalism but maybe wasn't intentional? Like if it's just something maybe fell off the window?
Correct. So sometimes I'll walk by and I'll see a poster that's maybe like on the floor. Like it's not missing, it's just on the floor.
Yeah.
And so I'll take a look at it. And if, say, the entire roll of tape, like it was stuck up with a little roll of tape, if the tape roll is on the poster that's on the floor intact, then it just became unsticky and it just fell off the wall.
Right.
Or vice versa, like if the tape is stuck on the wall and the poster's on the floor and the tape is intact on the wall, it just probably became unsticky. Now, maybe someone pulled it down, but I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and say that it just fell off. If the tape is ripped in half,
that's probably not natural. It
didn't just fall off the wall.
I love how you guys had to become little crime scene investigators, looking at the tape, trying to figure out. I mean, this is really, really good. Go ahead.
And like, could you tell something had been ripped? Is the back of the paper like actually still intact, or is the tape like partially pulled off from the paper? Because that doesn't just happen if the tape becomes unsticky.
Is the paper ripped?
Exactly. So you have to take care to like actually think about, is it possible for this to have happened naturally? And if there is any doubt, my rule of thumb is don't report it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If I think there is any way this could have just happened by itself, because I don't want to send administration on a wild goose chase looking at security camera footage just to find out the wind blew it down.
And you don't want them thinking that you guys are like looking for drama or looking to create a mountain out of a molehill. And, you know, like, because there are groups, I think on both sides of politics, that like they are looking for some kind of, you know, excuse to call themselves a martyr. You know, look at how this group censored me, or how this group did something that I didn't like. And here's like proof that like I'm making this huge difference, this whole thing. And like, yes, sometimes, but sometimes it can be a bit overdone. And you guys just sounds like are being really careful. Like you want your bias reports to really count. And so you want every single time you do it for it to be really obvious. No. This was legit. Some kid was, you know, violating your guys', you know, attempt at free speech on a public university.
Exactly. I also want to make sure that I'm not wasting administration's time and they don't feel like I'm wasting their time.
Yeah.
Because especially when we started this whole process, they weren't super thrilled with me or our club necessarily. Like we didn't have a great relationship to start with. Yeah. And so I wanted to make sure that I was never doing anything I didn't have to do. I was never making them spend more time on this than they had to by sending them down a wild goose chase of a vandalism that didn't exist. Yeah. Because I want them to take me very seriously and what I have to say very seriously. And that really segues into the other parts of writing a bias report, in that I want to make this as easy for the administration as humanly possible. So I need to write a bias report immediately. And that's a really probably the most obnoxious part of the whole thing. Don't wait 3 days later. Yeah. Like if it goes down, convenient. I am sitting in the hallway right there, pulling out my computer and sending the report. As soon as I notice it, I am doing it.
Why is it important to do it that fast?
Because it shows that I'm serious about this.
Okay.
This is important to me, and I want you to take it seriously too. And B, it is much easier for them to locate the actual event on the security camera if I get it to them immediately. Yeah. they're not going through ages and ages of security camera footage.
Right.
And combined with that, I also need to give them a time code for what to expect to look for in the security camera footage. So this might seem a little extreme, but my officers and I literally track how many times we've seen our display.
No, see, I was going to make sure that we got to this at some point today. I was like, I thought you'd skipped it, but no, this is really like when you told me about this when I was first in St. Olaf. I think that might have been the first time I was like, oh, these guys are brilliant.
So, like, if we have a hallway display up, all of the officers will be walking past it and keeping track, either mentally or in the group chat. We used to use like an actual group chat system where people would type in what time they'd walked by.
Right.
We don't do that as much anymore now that vandalism has become a lot less common.
Yeah.
But like, you always have to take a mental note when you walk by. Like, the last time I saw the display intact, I was on my way to lunch. It's 12:45.
Yeah.
I was on my way to dinner at 6:20, whatever. And so whenever someone sees a vandalism, you immediately put it in the group chat saying, I see a vandalism. It's 6:20 in the evening, whatever. Yeah. And then someone else can respond saying, I saw it intact at 3:40.
Right.
And then someone else will be like, well, I saw it intact at 4:30, etc. So immediately everyone knows to have their phone on them and kind of keep track. And you can call around the officers too if you need to, as quickly as possible to make sure you have a window of time. And then you sit down, you pull out your computer and say, right now it's 6:20. I walked by the display at 6:15, 5 minutes ago. And the last time this was seen intact was at 4:15. Boom. Yeah. Then all they have to do, and this comes from me actually talking to some person on public safety at St. Olaf when they were talking me through this process after one of the vandalisms. What they do is then they can pull up the footage and go to 4:15 and 6:20 and check and see, okay, I see that there's something there and I see that it's gone now. And then they'll like narrow the window by like half an hour and they'll check like, okay, 5 and 6 and be like, yep, it's there. Yep, it's gone. And they just keep narrowing it until they nail it. Instead of you reporting it 5 days later being like, we had a thing go away.
Yeah.
Be like, okay, you want me to watch
5 days of
5 days worth of security camera footage in order to find this for you? Like that is insane. And they're not going to want to do that. No one wants to do that.
Yeah.
So make sure that you have a way, whatever that is, for you to track when you've seen that display intact so that if something happens to it, you can give them as close of a window of time as possible. And sometimes it's going to be less than others. Like we've had times where something happened overnight. So I can tell them, at 10 p.m. last night, I know it was intact. At 9 a.m. this morning, it wasn't. Sorry, that's kind of a big window. But the building was also closed for part of that period, so that helps too. But like, give them all the information that you have to make this as easy for them as possible, and always do it immediately. Okay. On that note, you should also make sure that you're taking photos and submitting photos with your report. Our bias reporting system has a way to just attach photos to it. Perhaps you could send it in an email separately, whatever you need to do. But always take photos as soon as you've put anything up. So you have a photo of what things looked like before. So like, let's say we put up a hallway display. I will immediately, before I've left the hallway after putting the last piece on the wall, walk around and take photos of everything.
Nice.
And send them to all my other officers. So everyone has copies of what this thing looked like before in case someone else has to write the report for whatever reason. And then as soon as you see a vandalism, you need to take photos of what is missing so they can easily identify what happened. And if you have more specific, like you can zoom in on something because someone wrote something on one of your posters, or you can see a rip or whatever, like get some zoomed in photos and then also get this is what's gone. Yeah. So they have an idea when they look at the footage, okay, what am I looking for?
Right.
What actually happened here? Right. Which poster did it happen to? Is it all of them? Whatever. And then make sure that when you're writing the actual report, you do it in a way that's as concise as possible. And that goes back into the time codes and the photos. They don't want to hear about how you are mad that this got taken down. Right. It's a violation of my free speech. I made this mistake. And my very first bias report, I had to justify to them why this was wrong. They don't care. They don't want to hear it. They acknowledge that this shouldn't have happened.
There's a reason they have a reporting system.
There's a reason they have a reporting system. All you need to tell them is, hi, I'm the co-president of the pro-life group here at St. Olaf. And we have this display in Bunch Rock Commons. We have it reserved from this time to this time. I walked through the hallway at this time and our display was intact. Then I came back at this time. It was not. Photos attached. Done.
Boom.
It actually doesn't take that long, so you can stop right away and do it. You might be 2 minutes
You can
late
have
to class.
that saved as a template on your computer or in a Google Doc or something.
Put in the time codes in the photos.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they do not need to hear a long 7-paragraph essay. They just need, this is what happened. This is what is missing.
Yeah.
Done.
It sounds like you guys figured out how to do the bias reports well fairly early on. Would you say that as soon as you guys started doing it well, the campus started taking the vandalism seriously, or did that come later?
Oh, that absolutely came right away. As soon as I started writing the reports better, doing them more consistently, having more detailed information, and then actually essentially having them repeatedly. Because our first ones, too, we were just starting out.
Right.
They didn't really know our club was there. It's not a pattern yet. As soon as there started to be a pattern and I started to handle them very professionally, I immediately started getting responses and invitations to meet with members of the administration to talk about this situation. So I think it all has to do with really how consistent and professionally you handle yourself. If you handle yourself professionally, they will treat you like a professional adult. Because most professors and administrations like to treat college students like they are adults. Like they want to treat you like that. But sometimes college students are stupid and they don't deserve being treated like that. And then guess what? The adults won't treat you like that. But if you are like, nope, I'm an adult.
I'm professional.
They will treat you that way. And so I think that especially ties in with like what you do in meetings with your administration. Make sure that you are coming in as professionally as possible. So that means that I dress differently when I'm going to meet with my administration than I am when I'm just going to class, than I am if I'm doing outreach, say on my campus. Like we've talked at ERI before about what you should wear if you're doing outreach. You should try to dress more like an average college student and not be intimidating by what you look like. That is not true when I go meet with administration.
You want to dress like professionally, like business attire kind of thing? I do.
I dress professionally business attire. Now, you have to know the vibe of your campus. And so this isn't necessarily going to work for everyone. But if I'm going to be meeting with administration, I am always wearing like business slacks, a nice shirt, and a blazer. Like, I am a professional on this campus. I'm wearing something that I would wear, say, if I was giving a presentation in a business class on campus. Or I was doing my student teaching. I'm an education major, so that's something that's more relevant to me. I have, like, a section of my closet dedicated to teacher clothes. Like, this is what I wear when I am being a teacher who's older than I am currently. I'm, like, trying to give off that persona. So I'm pulling out of my teacher section of the closet when I am going to meet with administration. On that same vein, make sure you know what to bring with you when you're going to meet with administration.
What should you bring with? Like the copy of the bias report and pictures and stuff?
Copy of the bias report and pictures, as well as any items that are in question. So, for example, one time we had a vandalism where a student wrote something on one of our posters. And so I brought that physical poster with me to the administration. Another time I had a meeting where there were a bunch of posters that had gotten really ripped and like there were footprints all over them. Like they had been basically just like trampled on in the hallway and then abandoned in the hallway. I don't really know what happened there. Gotta make sure that some good Samaritan doesn't put it back up on the wall. Yes. So I grabbed that pile and I just had it in my bag.
Yeah, you didn't throw it away.
Exactly. Don't throw anything. I'm pretty sure I actually still have those in a closet somewhere.
Why?
Actually, I'm pretty sure I do.
Why?
That's probably not super relevant. You don't need to keep it that long. But I actually do think we have like a specific storage area for our club, and I'm actually pretty sure that those are still in there. The one with the writing on it, I turned into administration, and they still have that, to my knowledge. But anyways, make sure that if there's any specific things that are related to your bias report, a poster, or usually a poster in our case, make sure you have that. And so you can show it to them in person. Like, even if they've seen a picture of it, you can be like, I have this here. If you'd like to take a look at it, or if you'd like to keep it, that's totally fine. But just, if you take yourself seriously and like, this is an important meeting and I'm going to dress for an important meeting and I'm going to be physically prepared for it with the materials that I have, they're going to take that more seriously.
It's interesting. I hear you saying it's not just important for you to take your free speech rights seriously. In this case, like, First Amendment's relevant. You're on a public university. If you come in saying, my rights are being violated here. Like you do dressed in a t-shirt and jean shorts, and you don't have any of your stuff together. You are, sketchy on the details in your mind because it's been a while. Like you're not showing them, you're not acting like you take this really seriously. You're just saying my rights. And you're saying you use these other ways to show them that you are taking this seriously, and that'll help them to take it seriously.
Exactly. That also goes a lot into what you want to say when you're there. Like you don't just want to walk in and say, my rights are being violated, fix it.
Right.
That is not going to be taken seriously. They want you to work with them, and they want to know why you care so much about this. And not just because of your rights, because you are part of this campus with them. And so when I go in, I'm coming in with the mentality of, this isn't helpful for our campus. If we have students that aren't interested in engaging with other ideas, I know that you, insert administration, are really concerned about creating an awesome academic environment. And college is supposed to be about this great exchange of ideas and learning from people with different viewpoints. And I am specifically in this club because we're dedicated to exchanging ideas with people and talking through really difficult issues and making better political dialogue on campus. And I know that you also want that. So you and me, administration, we're on the same team here. I'm dressing like it. I'm coming prepared like it. We're both adults, and we're trying to make this better. And so I'm not here to yell at you, administration, for not protecting my free speech. I'm here to say, this is what happened to me. I know you don't want that. I know I don't want that. Can we work together to make this situation better? What do you, administration, need from me?
Yeah.
How can I help make the situation better? Because I know that this isn't good for our campus.
Yeah, that's great. How can they say no to that, right?
I think, if you're showing that you want to work with them, they're going to want to work with you.
Yeah.
It just makes it so much harder for them to say no and just ignore you if you're coming at it from that mentality.
You're also coming into this with an attitude that, this might not be the most natural thing for pro-lifers sometimes on a college campus where, people talk all the time about liberal college campuses and, the professors who are trying to make atheists out of everyone. And they're all these things, you're not coming in thinking of the admin as the enemy. And you're certainly not treating them like the enemy. You're treating them kind of like we talk about, this is not a debate, it's a dialogue. We're on the same team. You're treating them like you're all on the same team. We're all wanting to work for clearly a good campus where there's good exchange of ideas. You're not coming in with this holier than thou attitude of, I am the shining light on this campus, and I know you're not going to want to help me because I'm conservative and you don't agree with that, but you're going to have to because First Amendment guys, you're coming in hey, there's this thing. I'm sure we all agree this is not good. How can I help make this better? Which means you started by not walking in thinking of this person you're going to meet with from public safety or whatever as a member of the enemy or something like that. You're treating it like you're all on the same team.
Exactly. And that's a mindset shift that I had to go through. I think the first time I ever met with administration, I, in my own head, felt like administration was the enemy. And I think I did a pretty good job of hiding that and coming in and still portraying the mentality of we're on the same team. But it took some time for me to really digest that and have that be what's in my head, not I'm meeting with the enemy and I'm just pretending like we're on the same team.
Right.
Because administration really does want to work with you if they see that you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
You're a club that's committed to this kind of dialogue and you're not interested in yelling at people. You just want to create a better environment on your campus.
Yeah. There might be campuses where the admin are off the rails, super hostile, but don't go in starting with that assumption. Let them prove that to you.
Let them prove that to you. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so I think another thing that really helped to change my relationship with administration was the fact that my college club was so committed to doing outreach. And we kind of talked about that before in the sense that my club was portraying an idea of we want to make more productive dialogues on campus. And administration really respected that. But administration was also seeing that the student body's attitude toward my club was changing.
Yeah.
And that was precisely because of the outreach that we were doing. Because students saw us no longer as this just kind of closeted pro-life group that they didn't really know existed, that was just probably like all the clubs they saw in the media. Instead, they were actually seeing us out talking to students. They were having a chance to engage with our ideas and see our smiling faces and our positive body language and all of our practical dialogue tip usages. And it really started changing how they viewed who we were. And once the students started to have this more positive attitude towards us, administration started following suit. Because it's not like I was actually engaging with any administration at the outreach table, but administration hears things and is aware of what's going on campus. And so I think as the
they're probably
students,
watching even, like sometimes from a distance.
Oh, I've seen administration walk by before while I'm doing outreach. And so I think the fact that we were doing outreach so much started to also affect how administration was treating us. But you also have to be careful when you're doing outreach, because there's some mistakes that we made early on that I always try to help other clubs not make in relation to like the rules around outreach.
So not like the outreach mistakes we talked about a few episodes ago.
Right. But like physical outreach, how to do it without like breaking all of your campus rules. So point number 1, make sure you know what your campus rules are about outreach. So on my campus, we do outreach in the form of tabling, which is this weird like college student verb that no one else on the planet knows what it means. But basically it's like when you set up a table and do something on the table, you are tabling. It's just a verb.
So it could be a recruitment table. It could be a poll table outreach like what we do.
Like it could be anything. As long as you are a student organization and you're setting up a table, like usually in the student union, and you're doing something at the table, you are tabling. And so my college has rules about tabling. So make sure you know what those rules are. Like where are you allowed to table? And how long are you allowed to table? Do you have to reserve the table? How long in advance do you have to reserve the table? All of those things are going to be in your student handbook. And chances are there are probably rules about all those things. Because there are only, for example, 6 spots at St. Olaf that you're allowed to table. I have to have it reserved about 48 hours in advance. I have to do this very specific reporting system that is super obnoxious and complicated and like way more difficult than it needs to be in order to reserve my table. So just make sure that you check out the student handbook. And if you have any questions about it, just go to the student organization's office and they're going to be more than happy to help you. You don't even necessarily have to tell them who you are. Just be like, I'm a club leader. I'm trying to figure out how to reserve a table. Can you explain what this part means in the student handbook? And they will be like super happy to help you. But make sure you know what the rules are.
So let me ask you this. So I've done a lot of events with ADF where like I'll be in apologetics. I'll be the apologetics talk. And there'll be someone from Alliance Defending Freedom doing here's the things to know about your campus and make sure that you're not taken advantage of on your campus. And if you are, call ADF. We are here to help you, like that kind of thing. And they're great. We've pretty much always had someone from ADF on our advisory board. We love ADF. They're awesome. If I'm tracking with the kind of advice that they give and those kinds of general talks correctly, then I think that they have had cases where campuses have rules about free speech activities, but they are too strict. Like it's so hard to follow the rules, or it's like, even you describing there's only 6 places where we're allowed to do a free speech thing. I could imagine an ADF lawyer being like, that's not great. That's not like optimal. And so, maybe let us know, let us kind of take a look at that with you and see if we can make it easier for you guys to be able to do outreach stuff. Because we want people to all be able to do this exchange of ideas thing. And there have been colleges that are even worse, that are like, there is one little free speech activity, and it's this little square, and it's on the corner of campus where nobody walks, and that is the only place where you're allowed. And they're like, call us. We're going to help you with that. You should be able to do tabling events where like normal people walk all the time. So give me a sense of, on one hand, you want to work with the campus as much as you can and kind of have a good rapport and work within the rules kind of as much as you reasonably can. I imagine you would also say, yes, there are times where you should be fighting overly strict rules or things. How do you cash all that out?
My general rule of thumb is as long as a rule is being applied to all of the clubs on campus equally, essentially, then I'm not going to have a problem with it and I'm not going to mess with it. So if all of the clubs only have 6 places they can table. They're all in the student union. They're all, super accessible.
Yeah.
But they don't want people tabling all over campus. There's only those 6 places. And the ski club is dealing with the exact same restrictions that my club is.
And the Planned Parenthood
And
Club.
the Planned Parenthood Club. I'm fine with it. I'm not going to make a fuss about it, even though maybe one could argue that we should be allowed to table wherever we want. We doesn't have to be one of those 6 spots. I'm not going to make a big fuss about it.
As long as it's accessible. That's one of the things that you said,
accessible.
though.
Yes.
Like, if St. Olaf was forcing you, like, way in the back of the campus where no one walked, I imagine you would probably fight that.
Yes, I would fight that. Yeah. But I don't think that they would force the ski club back in the last corner of campus where no one would see them.
Yeah.
Like, that would just be a weird thing for them to do.
Right.
So I would be arguing that it isn't equal to how the other clubs are being treated, because we are a recognized club at St. Olaf. Yeah. And so my first move is to always make sure that we are being treated the same way as all of the other clubs.
Yeah.
We're not getting some weird treatment just because we're the pro-life group.
Right.
And so I think that is the biggest thing. Like, I don't want to be fighting every possible battle that I could fight, because I want administration to take me seriously.
Yeah.
And so I really only want to call on them when I absolutely need them. It's the same thing with the vandalism. When I'm not going to call every single little thing that might have been a vandalism.
Right.
I'm going to call it when I can prove and I know that it was a vandalism, because I don't want to bother them with everything on the planet. Yeah. And I think the same thing's true here.
Yeah, I think the accessibility thing is probably the key there, because it's like I've done outreach with the guys on the building with the weird name. I can never remember.
Bunch Rock Commons.
Yes, that place. And it's like there's people all over the place. Like, you're right next to like the cafeteria or the coffee place. Like, there's a lot of foot traffic. You guys are like in 5 simultaneous conversations, like a lot throughout the day. Like, there's no problem there. And as long as, okay, if there are these 6 spots, but you guys are always able to reserve and you're always able to do your outreaches kind of when you want to, then that sounds fine. If it's getting hard for you guys to do outreach, or if you're having to do outreach in places where people aren't walking, then that might be a time to push back.
Right, exactly. Another thing with college rules is that you always have to watch them to see if they change. Because we had a situation happen with that last year. Where we got a notification from the college that went to all of the student org presidents that there had been a change to the tabling policy. And I'll be perfectly honest, I am 99.9% sure that my club was the reason they made this policy change. I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure. Because our standard tabling setup is the should abortion remain legal table. It's got the yes, the no, it depends pad, blah-de-blah. Nowhere on that table does it say that we are the pro-life group that's running the table. This new rule change update said that every tabling event, every table set up by any student org must have something identifying the org who is in charge of the table, the org that set up the table.
Right.
And I'm like, that seems like that's directed at us. But I can't prove it. It's fine. They're making all the clubs do it.
Yeah.
And it's not going to seriously hinder my club's ability to do it. So we started following the rule. We printed a little sign that says this table is brought to you by with our club name. And then we, instead of hanging it from the front of the table where it would be visible from a long distance away, we put it on top of the table. So you'd have to walk up to it to then see it. So you'd already kind of be sucked into having to talk to us.
I'm a little surprised the admin didn't call you on that. Like, they were fine as long as the sign was on the table.
All they said was the sign had to be on the table. It's not like we made it a Post-it note. We we made it a note.
It's not like you gotta get the magnifying glass from Ant-Man to read the fine print.
It did not say in the rules how big this had to be or anything like that, but
You better believe they would have if you guys had pushed too hard, though.
I'm sure they would have.
If it was a little card.
We did not do that. We did the right thing. We made it was an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. This table's brought to you by, it was printed, looked really nice, and we just had it on the middle of the table, but on the top of the table.
Right.
So you couldn't see it from 50 feet away, like you could see the Sorrel sign from 50 feet away. But there was one time that it's not like we forgot the sign. It's okay. So here's the story. This is what happened.
What happened?
So Joshua and Felisa. Joshua was my co-president at the time. Felisa was our pregnancy advocate. Both amazing dialoguers. They were setting up our outreach table. I was scheduled to come in later in the outreach. So they were setting it up for the first time. And Joshua had gotten there first, I believe. I don't remember the order of the story, but one of them had gotten there first and like had part of the supplies, and the other one was on their way with the other half of the supplies.
I see where this is going.
And the second person is the one that had the little sign.
Right.
And so Joshua, I'm pretty sure, is the one who got there first. He started setting up things. We weren't done setting up. Like, he didn't even have all the materials. He had like the should abortion remain legal sign.
He's not starting conversations.
And some notepads. He's not starting conversation. He is like halfway set up. And someone comes over and is mad because we don't have a sign up.
A student or a member of the admin?
It was a student.
Okay.
This Joshua explained the situation to the student, is like, oh, like, we're not done setting up yet. That sign's on its way along with a bunch of other stuff. Like, we haven't actually started our official tabling yet.
Yeah.
And the student seemed to take that. Apparently, the student did not take that, because the student then went and reported it to the administration.
This is like after you guys have done outreach how many times?
So many times.
Like, everyone knows who you are at this point, right?
I know. So
they were looking
for a reason to get us in trouble. That's exactly what was happening, Josh.
Okay.
And so Felisa gets there, like, with the sign, and they finish setting up and they start doing the table. Life is good. I have not shown up yet. I look at my phone and I have an email from administration, which has our advisor copied on it. And it's like just to me, because I'm the one who's listed as like the org contact, being like, you know, you're in violation of our tabling policy. Like, we've been informed, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what on earth is going on? So I immediately call Joshua Police. I'm like, what's going on? So they explained the story to me. And I immediately responded to administration's email and just very professionally, you know, I'm so sorry that this happened. Let me explain. We actually hadn't started our official tabling yet. We were still setting up, so that sign wasn't out yet. But in the future, we will make sure that that sign is the first sign we put out as soon as we get to the table, so we don't have this miscommunication again. Thank you for understanding. And, you know, we weren't actually in violation of the policy because we hadn't started tabling yet, but we want to make sure that we never, you know, do anything that's against the policy. And so here's the explanation. And they took that. It was the end of the story. It wasn't a problem at all. But it's because we handled it very well. We knew what the policy was.
You were responsive.
We were responsive to it. We didn't scream about it.
Yep.
We just said, okay, look, this is what happened. Thank you for, you know, bringing this to our attention. But, you know, we actually already were aware. We were in compliance with the policy the whole time. Yeah. And we want to be in compliance with the policy. We're not trying to make trouble. I think that's half of the rule of my relationship with administration is, hi, I'm the Pro-Life Club. We're not trying to make trouble. Like, I'm really professional and I am trying so hard to follow all your rules. And I'm not going to yell about your rules unless they're actually a problem.
Now, imagine what your relationship with admin would look like if instead you had handled that by calling Sean Hannity's show or someone. You know, it's like one of these hosts that, you know, might be looking for an opportunity to be like, there's this pro-life club that is being
discriminated against,
or whatever, and you made it this kind of huge thing because it was pretty lame that the student you know filed a violation against
us for the fact that we didn't have the sign out yet when we were halfway set up.
The midst of setup, and the person knew that was the situation and yet still try to get you guys in trouble. Like, it's pretty lame. But you could have handled that a different way. And I'm interested, I haven't told you I was going to ask you this question. I'm just truly interested. How do you think that would have affected your long-term relationship with admin? What are the kinds of things that maybe you wouldn't be able to do in the future as a result of that, if anything?
I think it definitely would have affected our relationship. I think part of the reason that administration respects me is because I handle things myself. I handle it professionally. I work with them, and I don't try to like deliberately go above their head in some weird way or like make them look bad for something that isn't really their fault. I try to treat them like we're equals, like they're not the enemy, and like we're working together. We talked about that before. And I think had I done something like try to publicize the fact that St. Olaf was discriminating against me, they would have gotten legitimately annoyed with me. Like, I am creating bad PR for the college, which they don't want, obviously. And sometimes that's an effective move if they're truly doing something that's discriminating against you. But if they're not, again, I don't want to be the boy that cried wolf. Like,
Right.
this was not a huge deal. It really was
I think
not.
that's the point here.
That's the point here.
There are some
that,
things that are not big deals.
correct. And
some are.
Some are,
some
and
are
some
not.
aren't. And I tend to think that conservatives too often will make things into big deals that don't need to be big deals.
Yeah.
When we're talking about some sort of problem you're experiencing on a college campus or censorship or something like that.
Yeah. And we don't want to be the conservative who cried wolf.
We don't want to be the conservative who cried wolf.
Yeah.
So I think the way I handled it really caused us to continue to foster this positive relationship.
Yeah.
And for them to continue to want to support what our club was doing.
Yeah. And they have supported your club in a lot of ways as a result. It's not like there have been no benefits from you guys being in, having kind of this good working relationship or whatever. Like, you guys have had a lot of benefits from having an admin who, for example, takes vandalism so seriously that they're not ignoring it now. Now they're like getting on the security footage and they're figuring out the identity of the person who did the vandalism and then going and talking to that person. And like, these are things that a lot of pro-life clubs, they don't experience those things. And we would like them to be able to have that better working relationship with the admin. Again, in the case when the admin are not completely discriminating against the pro-life group over and over and over and really hampering their ability to do anything. That's not happened at St. Olaf.
Exactly. One last thing while we're on the outreach train, make sure that your club has an outreach nonviolence agreement, because that can be really helpful if you have to talk to administration about your outreach. If there's an event that, like, if there's something that happens around your outreach, like in our case, someone coming up and claiming we weren't following the outreach rules, whatever, administration might ask you in some sort of meeting to explain what outreach is and why you do it. And like, how can you prove that this is what you say it is, so to speak. So it's really helpful to have some sort of outreach nonviolence agreement that everyone who does outreach has signed. So you can show that this is what we are committed to not doing at outreach. And then you can explain what you are committed to doing. In other words, you can talk about how you're trying to create more productive political dialogues on campus because you think that college is a place where we should exchange different ideas. And you think that in general, people are really bad at talking to people who have different views, and you want to help fix that. And that's an idea that administration can really get behind. So if you have that nonviolence agreement and you have ideas about why your club does what it does, and you can bring those to the table in the discussions, that really helps administration take you more seriously.
Yeah, love it. So one of the things that I've learned from your club is this kind of interesting thing where we've talked a lot about transparency in our dialogues, that especially with young people, just the way young people are wired, they're very skeptical. They're not super trusting, especially of people from the other side of the political aisle. So being very transparent about your arguments, like there's nothing up my sleeve, here's my cards face up on the table, like that kind of style in the dialogue. It affects what questions we choose to ask, what questions we don't ask, things like that. You guys have applied that to other areas, even outside of dialogue, and I'm interested in hearing more about that.
Yeah. So we are really committed to making sure that the campus knows who our club is, not just vaguely, like there's this pro-life club and they do outreaches about abortion. Like, that's important. We want them to know that we're here trying to create more productive political dialogues, right? But we also want them to know who we are personally. And so we've done a few different things to help kind of put our faces out there, so to speak. And we don't require this of anyone in our club. And so it's really usually something just the officers do. And with their approval, and all of the officers have wanted to do this and to have found it really beneficial. So first, we start with doing some sort of social media campaign as soon as we elect new officers, kind of introducing the officers to the campus. Now, I know that the majority of pro-choice students on our campus are not following my social media pages. However, some of them are, along with pro-life students on our campus and people in our community. And so it's really helpful for us to do little bios. And so often, what our favorite thing to do is kind of create like a once-a-week campaign, because we don't have enough content as like an independent pro-life group, so to speak, to be posting something necessarily every day. So we try to post on all of our social media once a week, and we'll often do it in some sort of series so people know to kind of look for the next post the next week. And so we'll do like a Meet the Officers series where we'll have a photo of each of the officers and then their title and their hometown and their major and a bunch of fun facts about them that we come up with. And we'll post that every week. So
and I imagine this is a nice looking photo.
Yes.
Professional.
Yes. Or a fun photo. Sometimes it depends. We'll do different things with different vibes. Like you could talk about what you did this summer. And so you might have a photo from your trip of like you on the beach. And then there's a thing about how you like beaches. I don't know. But like you make it really personable and really like this is a normal person.
Yeah.
And I recognize them when I see them around campus. And I just get to know a little bit about them.
You're humanizing yourself.
Exactly. We're trying to humanize ourselves. Yeah. And this past year, because of COVID, we did something pretty bold that we'd never tried doing before. We decided to do a hallway display, which is one of our favorite things to do at Students for Life at St. Olaf. We love doing hallway displays. We do them all the time on like our big things. We do outreach and we do hallway displays. And often we do them at the same time. And it's really cool because then people see our display and come talk to us about it.
Right.
But we decided to do a display at the beginning of the year with my face and Meredith, my co-president's face, ginormous on a wall.
Huh.
So because we couldn't have any sort of student organizations fair that was in person, we had like this online thing that no one showed up to. And so recruiting freshmen was super hard. And we wanted to figure out also how to like let the pro-choice freshmen know we're here and know what we do. And just kind of continue the momentum we already had of humanizing our club and helping people to respect us and get to know us and what we're about. And so we decided to do a like Meet Students for Life at St. Olaf hallway display. And so we had, we have this ginormous hallway, and each of these huge windows is dedicated to a different part of our club. And so we talked about, this is outreach. This is what we do. This is why we do it. We had another one of like, this is our mission statement. We had another one like about the Northfield Women's Center, which is our local pregnancy resource center. And it's like, we partner with them. This is the ways that we do it. This is why they're awesome. Yeah. And then we had one whole window all about me and one whole window all about my co-president Meredith. And we like got our faces printed on giant posters and like had fun facts about ourselves. And like, it was insane. It was actually really weird to walk through this hallway all week and like see my face on a wall.
I'm gonna need to see pictures of this.
But it was super, super fun. And I saw so many people like walk by it and then see me and like recognize me around campus because of the display. And it just humanized the club so much more for people to know who we are. And that we're friendly and non-threatening. We want to be out in the community, and we want people to see us as being like them, being
Looking
college
back,
students.
do you wish that you had done that display in the first year?
Yes, absolutely. I totally do. I mean, I think it would have been more risky in the first year. Like, there was still part of me that was afraid to put my face on a wall of, like, what might happen. Because we get vandalism so rarely now. But, like, if it was going to happen, I was like, there could be some really interesting things that happen to my giant face on this wall. Like, I don't know if I'm...
Yeah, that's a good point.
And nothing happened. And that's something that Meredith and I talked a lot about. We're the two that did it as the co-presidents. We didn't want to make all of our officers do it. So the two of us did it, and we had a long conversation about, well, are we comfortable with that?
Yeah.
And certainly I would have quite a case to make to administration if something did happen to my face.
Right.
But we were both, willing and able to do it, and nothing ended up happening. Yeah. We had no vandalism on that entire display that whole week it was up. But I'm not sure that would have been the case had we done it the first year. Yeah. So looking back, I do think it would have been beneficial to do. I think it would have been riskier. Yeah. But I do think it would have been beneficial. Maybe second year. I don't know. We did it third year, right? So,
yeah.
But I think it was really helpful in just being transparent about who we are and what we do, what we're like, and just humanizes us, which I think is really needed.
You're not just pro-life avatars. You're musicians, and you have pets, and it's like all of those different things.
Exactly.
I think it's really valuable. And also, but I also like that you also had stuff talking about, we do outreach. Here's why we do outreach. Like, just making it crystal clear for anyone who still has not stopped to talk to you guys after 3 years of, multiple outreaches a month or whatever. Like, here's why we're doing this. And I could imagine there being some students to see that are like, oh, well, then maybe I will stop next time I see them. Like, I just think that, like, it's a transparency about, like, here's our values, here's our motivations, here's what we're doing. It just seems like there's no loss there. It's all win.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about kind of dealing with the student body and transforming that relationship, how to deal with administration. But there's one more kind of like really obvious group that we haven't talked about that I get a lot of questions about.
Uh-huh.
And that is your college's pro-choice club.
Yeah.
How do you deal with them?
Mm-hmm.
Because different colleges have different kinds of clubs that are a lot more active than others, a lot more hostile than others. So I've heard a lot of different stories. My particular pro-choice club is actually pretty small in literal numbers. I'd say they have maybe like 15 to 20 active members, but they have a whole campus that's largely behind them. And they've managed to successfully organize protests against our local pregnancy resource center. They've done all sorts of campaigns, like in cooperation with the wellness center on campus. So like they'll do things a lot. They have a lot of events all the time. And so trying to kind of foster a relationship with them was a really interesting process. And I really encourage all pro-life groups to try to foster some sort of a relationship with the pro-choice counterpart at wherever you are, assuming there is a pro-choice counterpart.
Right.
And of all the things, this is still the biggest work in progress for us. I feel like we have a pretty good working relationship with administration. I feel like we have a much better relationship with our student body. The relationship with our pro-choice group is not where I'd like it to be. It's a lot better than it used to be, but I have a lot of work to do, and I think people can learn from just like hearing what's
so talk a little
so
bit
far.
about what it was like in the beginning, what's it like now, and what you did in the middle of that.
So at the beginning, our relationship was just kind of non-existent. Like, we didn't talk to them. They didn't talk to us. We just kind of pretended that the other didn't exist.
Okay.
That was basically where we were at. Like, they would come to our events somewhat disrespectfully, to be honest, ask some really obnoxious questions. We didn't really go to their events. We just kind of stayed separate and like ignored each other. But that started to change a little bit. First, when we realized that it was beneficial to attend their events.
Yeah.
And specifically make sure that you're doing it in the way you'd like them to attend yours.
Yes. Yes.
And so we would go, let's say they had a speaker, and I would be like really tempted to, say things and like try to argue with the speaker. But I was like, okay, how would I want them to come to my event? I'd be like, I wouldn't want them to sit here silently. Like, I would actually want them to engage with my speaker in some way and like ask questions, but ask really good questions that are like charitable and understanding and thought-provoking and like showing that they were listening and caring about what the speaker had to say. So then we would try to do that. Like, go to their event, ask good questions, and be the respectful presence that you wish they had at yours.
I really like that you said that. So, like, I'm thinking about like the times that I've spoken on campuses, and it's never bothered me having pro-choice people in the question line at the end. The line behind the microphone or whatever. Like, I'll specifically invite them. Like, I'd rather hear questions from pro-choice people that sat through this whole thing than you pro-lifers. And it's like I've never felt like having even a pro-choice like philosophy professor ask an interesting question. Like that's awesome. Like, yeah, let's talk about that. Or like anyone asking any kind of. I like that you talked about the thought-provoking question thing. Like, there's something about that, even if it's from a pro-lifer. Like, I did I promise this is not a humble brag. I got just the memory in my head of speaking at I forget which campus in Colorado, but Dr. Frank Beckwith came, which was really kind of him. And he asked a really good question. He's pro-life. We're on the same team. But he asked even kind of challenging, kind of like, I don't think he was completely convinced by the way that I was making the argument. And so we had this like nice dialogue back and forth. And it's like, that's much more memorable than just the people who just kind of sat silently and watched the whole thing. So I just think it's really interesting the way that you're thinking about, like, you're not trying to be so, I gotta chill. You're like, I'm just going to I'm in the back. I'm cool. I'm not here to cause trouble. Like, you're like, I'm willing to ask an interesting question, but I'm going to do it respectfully, thoughtfully.
Exactly. I mean, plus, let's say it's a speaking event. no one wants to have their speaker say, okay, now we're going to do a Q&A. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
And just crickets happen.
Oh, it sucks.
Right?
It's so awful every time.
Awful.
Oh.
And so they want you asking questions.
Yeah.
So ask good questions. Ask them well and show them that you were listening and that you cared enough about their point of view to want to understand it.
Yeah.
That really changes a lot. And also, I encourage you to use those events to introduce yourself to the pro-choice club officers at the very least. You can say, this was a great event. I really, I thought your speaker had a lot of interesting things to say. Thanks for inviting me if they did invite you. Or
right.
Thanks for putting up the posters about this. I was really excited to see it and come. Something like that. Because often I've noticed that the people in the pro-choice club don't come up to our outreach table. That's the group of people that I have not had any success reaching at St. Olaf. They just don't want to engage with us. I genuinely don't think any of them have heard any of my arguments because they don't come up and talk to us.
Yeah.
They don't want to. They're just, mind is made up. I'm not going to pay attention to the pro-lifers. And so I don't have that opportunity to build a relationship with them. And so I have to go out of my way.
You're being very intentional.
Exactly. I have to be very intentional about meeting them and learning their name and finding out a little bit about them if I can. And then I try to continue to foster that relationship in the future. Yeah. Meredith and I now know a few of the pro-choice club officers, and if we see them around campus, we will deliberately say hello to them.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a wave and a smile or a, hey, Annika, whatever, say their name, recognize that you know who they are, and you, recognize their existence.
Yeah.
You're not just ignoring your pro-choice club. You know they're there. So be nice.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
I think your presence says a lot too, because it's difficult. And I always kind of say this to pro-choice people that come to my stuff. It is inherently difficult to sit and listen to a lecture from someone you disagree with. It's good for the pro-choice people who are here. The pro-lifers, they get no credit from me. You're pro-life. Of course you're here. It's the pro-choice people. It's just something good about you. It's just something about your open-mindedness, your intellectual virtue, or something that you would come, even if they are, some of them planning on just ripping me a new one during Q&A, and they think they're going to hate me the whole time. It's good for you for being here. And I think there are probably a lot of opportunities for pro-life people to go to events that pro-choice people are going to be doing that are going to make you uncomfortable, but I think your presence would be valuable. I'll never forget, this is not my idea, I'll never forget David Lee, who started Justice for All. We did, I think the first time I did outreach with them, we kind of had this morning after 2 days of outreach. We're just hanging out at this church, just debriefing and musing about the campus and the outreach and pro-life strategy in the future and things like that. And he talked about man, if you're on a campus, there's this culture here. There's this little microcosm of culture happening here. That's just very specific. Every campus has a specific culture, and there's events that are happening there that are maybe unique to college life. And it's he said the pro-lifers should go to the Take Back the Night events. So these anti-rape events. You might not agree with everything the speakers say at that event because there might also be this pro-choice stuff in it or whatever, but we agree that rape is really bad and just your presence there. And I'll say another one that's probably more controversial, but I feel if I were a pro-life college student, I would be going to the Black Lives Matter things too. I wouldn't be part of a violent protest, a riot or something like that, but just going and listen to the speakers and have your presence shown and just be I'm interested in learning from people who might be coming from a different place than me, or I feel I've got things that I need to even learn about this subject, and I'm out of confirmation bias land. I'm not just listening to Fox News talk about Black Lives Matter. I'm going to come and listen to the Black Lives Matter speakers at this outdoor rally and, and just be there. Campuses are these small places. Relatively small places where just your presence there, I think, could make it if you were noticed by the pro-choice club at places like that, it might start feeling safer for them to to reach out to you and try to have those conversations.
I absolutely agree. I mean, just you being at that event doesn't necessarily mean you're endorsing it.
Right.
Like, if you go to an event that you disagree with,
Right.
you are there saying, I support that this event is happening. I
Right.
support that we're having these kinds of discussions. Maybe I don't agree with anything this speaker says, but I think that viewpoints deserve to be heard.
Yeah.
And so I'm here because that's what I'm dedicated to,
Yeah.
not because I agree necessarily or disagree necessarily, but
Right.
I'm going to come, I'm going to listen, I'm going to ask good questions,
Right.
and I'm going to be more informed about both what I think and about what other people on my campus think.
Right. Yeah. It's not like, I mean, how often do you go to an event where you agree with everything that happens?
Never.
Like, I mean, I don't think a pro-life person's ever gone to one of my events and agreed with every single thing that I just got an email this morning from someone disagreeing with something on a podcast we put out a year ago. Like, that's common. That's fine. Like, I think that person's wrong, but I'm glad, like, yes, they got exposed to an idea that pro-life people don't usually say, and that's good for that person. And maybe that person's not convinced, at least not yet, but, like, that's okay. Like, we're used to that if like, we agree, like, generally speaking with a person. So why can't we go to events from the other side where we are maybe only going to agree with 30% of the things that are said, and that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
let's be hearing them. They deserve to be heard too.
Yes. And I think another great way to do that is to try to do some sort of collaborative event with your pro-choice club if you can. Because if you really are like what you say you are, and you're committed to trying to expose different viewpoints and think about issues well, then you should want to engage with that pro-choice club, right? And so we actually did attempt and failed, I could get into that in a second, to do a collaborative event with our pro-choice club on our campus. And it was a really, really positive experience, despite the fact that the event itself never happened. That's a long story. The pro-choice club pulled out, not actually for any reason related to us, but there was something else that was going on campus at the time, and they felt like that time wasn't appropriate. They didn't want to do the event anymore because of this other issue.
Okay.
But they had been really happy with how we were handling the situation,
Nice.
and it really helped our rapport with the other club.
What kind of event would it have been?
So it was supposed to be some sort of a like roundtable discussion-esque thing where they were going to bring in a speaker of their choice and we were going to bring in a speaker of our choice. It was actually going to be you. This
kind of remember us talking about
I feel
doing
like I
this
told
at
you
some
about
point.
doing
Yeah.
this. Yes. This was before I had met you. But
Okay.
like we had mentally chosen that
Yeah.
you were going to be our person.
I remember someone
and they were
asking me
gonna
if I
bring
did it.
in
Yeah,
someone, and we were going to have some sort of like. Ideally, it was going to be kind of a 3-part event where the pro-life speaker was going to have maybe like 30 minutes to give a speech on whatever topic they wanted. It wasn't going to be like a debate where like they had to give
Right.
a pro and a con or like an odd, both speaking on the
Right.
same thing. It was just going to be like a pro-life person, talking about whatever I think we were going to have you talk about bodily rights arguments. And then the pro-choice speaker was going to have a half an hour to talk about whatever they wanted. And then we were going to have just some sort of roundtable Q&A for both of the speakers so that they could kind of engage with each other's ideas, both engage with the audience. And it was just going to be a super interesting event where people could come and hear different perspectives. And the idea was originally my club's idea. It was actually Meredith's idea, giving her credit for this. She then helped us to reach out to the pro-choice club and see if they would be interested. And they were, which was awesome. And we started having some like group meetings with them. First of all, we did them over coffee, which is the smartest idea ever.
Yes.
Like if you get food involved, people automatically just become nicer to each other. Like, it's amazing.
Yep.
There's so much rapport that's built because you're drinking coffee with someone else. I don't really know why that's a thing, but there's something like psychologically there that happens that just everything's better. And just because we had it in that environment, there was a lot more humor going back and forth. Like, we started to just get to know each other as people as we're just like sitting on some couches drinking coffee, talking about how cool this event could be.
Yeah.
And that never would have happened had we not met them at their events and learned their names and kind of felt comfortable like we could reach out to them and have these kinds of conversations. But another thing that we did is we had them work with us to write kind of a goal description for the event. So like, what is the purpose of this event going to be?
Yeah. It wasn't like you guys are trying to like be in the driver's seat and like, here's the description. Are you guys cool with it? Okay, we'll send it on. You're collaborating with them on
We're
this.
collaborating. As a matter of fact, we had them kind of take the lead on that. Like, we
Oh,
talked about
interesting.
it. We were like, why don't you guys take the first draft of what you think the goal should be? Then they can send it to us for editing. And that's exactly what we did. And within that description, they kind of started out by, explaining we want to have this joint event together. The pro-choice view kind of says this thing. The pro-life view kind of says this thing. And they actually did a pretty good job of explaining the pro-life view. I was pretty impressed.
Nice.
Like, I made a couple edits, but I was
Yeah.
like, that was kind of the best
not
I've
bad.
heard. That was not bad.
Yeah.
It was not, it was a good, I would not call it a steel man of the pro-life position, but I wouldn't call it a straw man either. It was just like a man. It was like a pretty average man, not a straw man, not a steel man.
A wood man?
A wood man.
Whatever.
It was something in the middle where I was like, all right, not bad. But honestly, their pro-choice argument wasn't fabulous either. And so then I got the document and I made our argument better. And then I also made their argument
that
better.
is
and
so
we edited
cool.
it and sent it back. And they were like, ooh, that was a good way to explain that. And so we went back and
That's
forth and
amazing.
built some great rapport with just us talking about what are the best versions of the arguments on both sides. And I think they also just had a lot more respect for me when I made their argument stronger.
Yeah. I mean, how great would it have been to be a fly on the wall when they're seeing the edits there? I mean, what's that meme? The crow who drinks the weird. What's that drink? But she's she goes through multiple
Yes. Okay.
What's that weird drink called?
I don't know
she's
what
drinking,
it's called.
but I'll put it on the thing.
Oh my
I'll
gosh.
link to it. But
Yes.
it's one of the best gifts. But it's them going through that. Wait a minute, she's editing. And I'm oh wait, actually, that is better. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Anyway.
exactly. It was just such a positive experience for us, and I'm really sad that it didn't work out. But I think it really helped our two clubs to get to know each other and respect each other, and our relationship ever since then has been a lot more positive. But actually, I was talking to Joshua, my former co-president, a few days ago, and he told me that he managed to pull off a collaborative event with the Pro-Choice Club on his campus. So he's now in graduate school. He's at Johns Hopkins University, and he's in a pro-life club there. They're super awesome. They're called Voice for Life, and they managed to pull off a collaborative event this past semester with the Pro-Choice Club.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, how the heck did you do that, Joshua? Give me the details. What happened? And it was actually the Pro-Choice Club's idea, which is really interesting to me.
That is interesting.
But basically what he told me is that he thinks that communication is really key, which was my experience as well for us. How you have those conversations to get started and designing what this is going to be is really the most important part. If you can sit down over coffee or make a group chat over text or whatever it is so that you kind of feel like you're all on the same team designing this event together to plan it, then you're going to have a much more positive vibe around the whole thing. Being like, okay, this is really neat. We can make this event happen together. Let's be on one team. That's really, really, really crucial. And I think the success honestly just has a lot to do with your attitude.
Yeah.
Whether you are going in being kind and open and compassionate and just having this friendly ERI-like persona of I'm using these practical dialogue tips while I'm talking to the Pro-Choice Club.
Right.
I'm trying to really work with them and help their walls come down and build common ground with them through doing an event.
If you go in with that persona and they are still mean as a result, then they're probably really, really mean because it's hard not to all right, I'll kind of meet you halfway. There's just...
Yeah, exactly. So I think the moral of the story of this whole podcast is just be nice and be professional.
I think that's been the moral of multiple podcasts that we've recorded today, but that's okay.
Good point. Be nice, be professional to other students, to the Pro-Choice Club, to administration.
Yeah.
It's just going to make a world of difference. I think, honestly, the funniest story that I have that I love to tell is the time that, this was my sophomore year, we brought in a pro-life speaker. They were kind of a local pro-life speaker. And we had booked one of the ballrooms on campus to use for this speaker. And you know how ballrooms work, right? There's dividers.
Yeah.
So there can be another event happening in the other half of the ballroom, which was
and
what
everyone
was
can
happening.
kind of hear each other. It's
Right.
annoying.
This is precisely what was happening in our case. Except little did we know that the ballroom next door to us had been booked by Planned Parenthood. Now, we could not see that it was Planned Parenthood who had the other ballroom, and they didn't know that we were the ones that had this ballroom. So, like, complete accident. It's not like they deliberately did it or we deliberately did it.
Yeah.
We just get there, and the only reason I found out is because my speaker is setting up. It's like 20-ish minutes before the speech is supposed to start.
Right.
And they had a PowerPoint, so I was, like, setting up the projector.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, like, I was showing their pro-life PowerPoint.
Right.
All of a sudden, the projector screen switches, and I'm looking at a PowerPoint for Planned Parenthood. And I'm like, what? What's going on here? I was, like, very taken aback. I was like, I don't know what's going on. And so what happened was the projector system just, like, went berserk, and it wouldn't allow us to have one thing projecting in one ballroom and a different thing projecting in the other ballroom.
That's a terrible system if we're going to be booking events in this.
Well, it was broken. Like, it was supposed to be that each of the projectors could do its own individual thing, but something wacko and technology went berserk. And so suddenly I was getting Planned Parenthood's PowerPoint.
Right.
Their event also hadn't started yet. I think they were starting at the same time. So it was like starting at the hour, it's starting at 7 o'clock and it's 6:40 or whatever. Yeah. And so I'm like, oh gosh, how are we going to deal with this? So I waltz over there to the Planned Parenthood room and, like, introduce myself to the lady from Planned Parenthood. And she was completely oblivious to the fact that this had happened because she had just turned on the projector and it automatically, like, it was showing in her screen and duplicating in ours. And so I explained, who I was. We were also having an event, and she was super apologetic and super nice because I handled myself really nice and professionally. Yeah. Not like I wasn't mad. It wasn't her fault.
You weren't blaming her.
I wasn't blaming her.
You were taking over our projector.
There's clearly a technology mistake going on here. Yeah. And so she and I, like, worked together and called IT together to try to figure out how to fix this. And unfortunately, IT couldn't fix it in enough time. Yeah. And so I, like, went back over and talked to my speaker, and he was like, I don't really need the PowerPoint. It was just a couple photos. Like, it's not that important. So we were okay. And I went back over and I offered to the Planned Parenthood presenter, I was like, we don't need the projector that desperately. Yeah. So if you need it, that's fine. We'll just turn off ours on our side. Yeah. And, I hope you have a great presentation. Yeah. And we could have had this horrible confrontation with them, but they left seeing me as this nice pro-life person who was having our event, and we had great attendance, everything was fabulous, and we didn't cause a huge scene when we didn't need to. We were just normal, nice people that would work with somebody who I knew disagreed with me. Yep. But we could work together just because I handled the situation and I bet decorum.
This is part of the reason why in the future they were open to collaborating on an event with you guys, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was specifically a Planned Parenthood event. It was obviously
so the Pro-Choice Club is not part of this at this point?
They're part of it, sort of. So Planned Parenthood comes on our campus about once every other month and does some sort of an event-y thing in combination with the Pro-Choice Club. Got it. So it wasn't specifically the Pro-Choice Club's event, but they were all there. Yeah, of course. They saw the whole thing.
I think this kind of a thing would stand out. Like, it stands out to me when I do an event and, like, pro-choice people are there and they're interacting with me in any way, like, whether it's positive or negative, like, that stands out so much more than, I'm sorry, hanging out with the pro-lifers like during the event. Like, well, I'm expecting that. I'm on, like, red alert when there's, like, pro-choice people around, and I'm just like, I want to. I'm just thinking about how I'm presenting myself and all of that. And so there's no way they didn't notice the way that you handled that you weren't all mad about, like, well, I guess no one can use projectors because that's not fair. Like, we got to make it fair and, like, all this stuff. Like, you handled it nice and respectfully, and then they were open to doing something with you down the road. Like, you never know the seeds that you are going to sow just being a nice person on an evening.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's close with this. If there's a student that has been listening to these episodes and now knows you're willing to offer advice to clubs that have less experience, Are you open to giving advice to more clubs that would like your advice?
Oh my gosh, of course I am. I am always happy to talk to other college, high school, community pro-life groups, no matter where you are on like kind of your journey. If you've just been introduced to ERI, if you're dealing with a really hostile campus, if you're an awesome rockin' club and you want to tell me about the cool things you're doing and give me advice for my club, like I am always open to that. So yes, please just send me an email. As you probably know by now, I'm ERI's newest staff member. So I do have an official ERI email.
Yep.
So here we go. It's Emily@equalrightsinstitute.com. So my name's
really,
Emily. Pretty
really
easy
hard
to
to
remember.
Yeah.
Emily@equalrightsinstitute.com. Just shoot me an email. I would love to meet with you over Zoom, over the phone, just answer questions over email, whatever you want. I'm here for you.
You're not wanting to take over their club or tell them what they should do, what they need to do. You're just open to helping for anyone that wants help.
Exactly.
Cool. Thanks.